Hi again, everybody. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com, and this is another episode of Ask the Lawyers. It looks like the sexual abuse scandal plaguing the Boy Scouts of America is not going to be going away anytime soon. And today, to give us some of the latest information and more insight about it, is attorney Stewart Eisenberg of the Pennsylvania-based Eisenberg, Rothweiler, Winkler, Eisenberg, and Jeck PC. His law firm focuses its practice on catastrophic personal injury and has recovered hundreds of millions of dollars for victims of personal injury cases nationwide. Stewart, thank you for making some time for us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for having me.
So can you give us a short walkthrough of this scandal and then maybe a little update where things stand right now?
Well, Ron, it really began the end of last year, the beginning of this year, in pretty much January of 2019, when the Boy Scouts of America indicated that they were considering declaring bankruptcy. And that came as a shock to a number of us in the legal world who represent sexual abuse victims, because they had indicated that they would probably be filing for bankruptcy sometime soon because of outstanding claims they had for boys who had been sexually abused by scoutmasters over a number of years. So that started a rash of questions and inquiries and people wondering what was going to happen with the Boy Scouts and with potential claims that existed and could exist in the future. We then reached out to a number of people and have actually talked to over 400 people who have been abused in scouting, and we've developed a list, and we actually have notified the Boy Scouts of these abusers, many of which who have been previously unidentified. The Boy Scouts over the years have maintained what's called the perversion files, which is a sick name, but they've given it that name of files they've accumulated over the years on scoutmasters who have abused youngsters while in scouting, and they have pretty much hidden this information both from the victims' families and from the public. So this is something that is ongoing. We're continuing to investigate claims of people who have been abused over the years, and it goes back many, many years. So if they do declare bankruptcy, we are ready to present them with these claims.
So let's cover some of the things you touched on there. Some of these cases go back decades. I assume they are subject to statute of limitations, right?
Yes, they are. And that's why many of them, most of them, could not be filed in courts today, although there are many states, including California, New York, and New Jersey recently, who have opened up windows of opportunity for people who have been sexually abused, not just in the Boy Scouts, but in all sorts of instances, whether it's religious institutions or community institutions, where the abuse has occurred decades ago, that they are now have an opportunity to bring those claims regardless of the statute of limitations. Those three states are the latest ones. But yes, you're correct that many of these cases are barred by the statute of limitations, depending on what state the survivors come from. But there is an opportunity to present these claims, even if they are barred by the statute of limitations, should the Boy Scouts declare bankruptcy, because it becomes a claims process and each case is evaluated on its own, on their own merits, for pluses and minuses, and statute of limitations is just one element in a bankruptcy proceeding.
So that's my next question. If they do declare bankruptcy, how does that affect awarding of damages or recovery from damages and those sort of things?
Well, once the Boy Scouts declare bankruptcy, just like some other religious institutions have declared bankruptcy over the years, there's a trustee that's appointed by the court, and that trustee establishes a creditors committee. And that creditors committee is usually made up of attorneys who represent the survivors or the victims. And those attorneys would negotiate with the Boy Scouts, depending on how many claims there are, depending on what the nature of the injuries are, and there would be a sum of money that would be set aside by the Boy Scouts, whether that's cash that they have on hand or properties they have to sell, that could compensate these victims. And then there's a time period to submit your claims, and the awards are made based on the various factors that I mentioned: the nature of the abuse, whether there's a statute of limitations involved, the state that it comes from, the age of the person when they were abused, and so forth. Those are all aspects that are taken into account when coming up with a sum to compensate these survivors.
So if someone who has not come forward yet hears that they may file for bankruptcy, or at some point that they have, that doesn't mean, oh well, I shouldn't pursue anything, because there's still an opportunity there.
Yes, there's still an opportunity. They should contact their lawyers. They can contact us. We have a whole website that's devoted to abuse in scouting, and the information is readily available, and we can advise them what the best course of action is. There are states that are contemplating opening up statute of limitations, like Pennsylvania is one of them. They haven't done so. The Catholic Church has established various compensation funds in the counties around, or the archdiocese around the state. But there's different laws that apply to each individual states. Sometimes boys or whomever were abused have been abused in various states. Particularly, for instance, in Pennsylvania, sometimes the victims are taken over to New Jersey or New York, and those open up opportunities for the victims to take advantage of the most liberal and most advantageous statute of limitations for them.
As more and more states do make these changes to their statute of limitations, do you think that is going to pressure the BSA to get closer and closer to filing for bankruptcy? What would be your educated guess as to whether or not they'll file?
Well, they've indicated that they will, and I believe that the states opening up their windows will accelerate that process if they have that in mind, because in those states there will be no statute of limitations. So there will be hundreds, if not thousands, of claims brought in California, for instance, and certainly similar amounts in New York and New Jersey. So those claims would be not only for the Boy Scouts, but for every sexual abuse victim. But the Boy Scouts particularly are probably the most vulnerable institution in and of themselves, because they are nationwide. And they've existed since the beginning of the 20th century, established by Congress. And they have many properties and campsites and buildings around the country. And hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have gone through scouting over the years. And it's just an incredible amount of people who have been vulnerable, and many have actually been abused.
Could this be the end of the Boy Scouts of America, at least as we know it?
Well, it could be as it exists today. They will probably try to exit bankruptcy or come out of bankruptcy, as they say, similar to what Chrysler or GM did a decade or so ago, when they declared bankruptcy and then established a new corporation to continue on with their business. I would suspect they would want to reestablish themselves and hopefully put in safeguards and protect people much better than they do today. So it could be the end of the Boy Scouts, but it also could be the beginning of a new Boy Scouts.
Do you see this at some point becoming a class action, and how does that affect things with the bankruptcy and that sort of thing?
Well, it's not technically a class action, although class action is sometimes molded into what's called a mass tort, right. Which means a lot of people get together and sue one company. It occurs a lot of times in pharmaceutical litigation, where dangerous drugs have been pulled off the market and many thousands of people have been injured. This could be a mass tort in that same respect, so that many people could join together in one court. If they declare bankruptcy, it would only be in one court. It would be in the bankruptcy court. And if they don't declare bankruptcy, it could be in California, it could be in New York, it could be in New Jersey, where many people could get together. It could be in Washington, D.C., because that's where the Boy Scouts were created by Congress in D.C., or could be in Texas, where they have their national headquarters.
How quickly do you think we would see if they do file for bankruptcy? Do you see that being weeks away, months away, years away? How long would you think?
Well, I would think it certainly would be within the year, before the end of the year. It could be within a month, it could be within 3 months, 6 months, but certainly probably not beyond 6 months. If it goes beyond there, then they probably won't be declaring bankruptcy.
Gotcha. Well, Stewart, thank you for your time today. I appreciate it, and some good information. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for having me.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyers. My guest has been attorney Stewart Eisenberg of the Pennsylvania-based firm Eisenberg, Rothweiler, Winkler, Eisenberg, and Jeck. Please take a second to click on the button at the bottom of the screen and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that way you'll know about future episodes. And if you think you might be the victim of institutional sexual abuse and you want the best information, or you're ready to choose a lawyer that lawyers choose, please visit AskTheLawyers.com.